Conan, what is best in life? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you?
The comics scene in the 80s was abound with stories of the sword and sorcery genre, with Conan being at the center of it all. This genre was so loved by the people that Stan Lee got numerous emails from fans asking Marvel to also delve into the sword and sorcery genre, which finally led to a brand new Conan the Barbarian series written by Roy Thomas. Conan, however, goes back a long way, as the character was created by Robert Irvin Howard in 1932 for a series of fantasy sword and sorcery themed stories for the Weird Tales magazine. The journey of this character from magazine to standalone comics and paperbacks to Hollywood is super interesting, so keep watching to know all about Conan the Barbarian. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin. Exploring the earliest appearance of Conan. Let us dive straight into this earliest appearance of Conan as written by Robert Irvin Howard. In the early 1930s, Howard was looking for a fresh character to introduce to the expanding pulp markets at the time. He sent the short story People of the Dark to Clayton Publications' brand new Strange Tales of Mystery and Terror magazine in October 1931. The protagonist of the novel, People of the Dark, describes one of his past lives. In the first-person narrative, a black-haired barbarian hero, Conan, worships the god Crom. Some Howard historians think that this Conan was a precursor to the more well-known character. Following his first mention of Conan in February 1932, Howard holidayed at a border town on the lower Rio Grande. During this trip, he was influenced by the violent culture of the Wild West, which favored brawn fights and duels as methods to settle conflicts. Howard himself was a man who was physical in nature and would have been a prized fighter if not for his love for writing and literature. All of his life experiences in the Wild West and living in an oil boom town played a major role in the creation of Conan. In May 1929, after returning from the trip, Howard revised his story By This Axe I Rule that had been rejected, substituting his new hero for the previously written Cull of Atlantis character and renaming it The Phoenix on the Sword, and submitted it for publishing. Other pieces that Howard submitted to the Weird Tales magazine include The Scarlet Citadel and The Frost Giant's Daughter. Although The Frost Giant's Daughter was turned down, The Phoenix on the Sword was accepted and appeared in the December 1932 issue of the journal. The month after, The Scarlet Citadel came out as well. Seeing the positive response to the stories written by Howard, editor Farnsworth Wright asked Howard to create an 8,000-word essay for his own use that described the Hyborian Age, the fictional world that the Conan stories were set in. Howard's invented pseudo-historical era known as the Hyborian Age is set after the demise of Atlantis and before the rise of any other known ancient civilization. For many of the fantasy stories in his created world, Howard invented a false history that included this particular era known as the Hyborian Age. This essay further served as Howard's blueprint for The Tower of the Elephant, a new Conan tale that was the first to include his revised understanding of the Hyborian world. Howard was inspired to create further Conan tales for the Weird Tales after The Tower of the Elephant was published and became popular. In fact, he had completed 21 stories by the time of his death by suicide in 1936, and 17 of them have been made public to adoring readers. In these stories, we saw Conan as a chivalrous Cimmerian who would fight honorably despite being portrayed as a savage man. As per his earliest stories, Conan was the son of the local blacksmith and was born on a battlefield. He developed swiftly as a young man, and by the time he was 15 years old, he was already a renowned warrior who had helped bring down the Apollonian citadel of Venarium. After its destruction, he developed a wanderlust and set forth on the adventures that Howard went on to write about, where he encountered lurking creatures, wicked wizards, tavern wenches, and lovely princesses. He was a thief, bandit, mercenary, and pirate who traveled the Hyborian Age countries. Conan frequently accomplishes heroic deeds during his adventures, but his primary motivations are survival and monetary gain. Although Howard died in 1936, only 4 years after he created Conan, the character would live on after his death and gain more popularity than Howard could ever have imagined. Conan in comics paved the way for a movie adaptation. The story of Conan definitely kicks off with the comics. While Howard did a brilliant job with the character, many writers and illustrators picked up his work post his passing. Since 1970, Conan the Barbarian has made almost countless comic book appearances. The comics, more than the books, may have been the medium that contributed most to the character's fame and longevity. Conan's first comic book adaptation was created in Spanish and released in Mexico in the 1950s. However, this was unlicensed and done without the permission of Howard's estate. Conan the Barbarian, which ran from 1970 to 1993, was the first officially sanctioned comic adaptation to be written in English and published by Marvel Comics in the 1970s. Conan the Barbarian, written by Roy Thomas and drawn by Barry Windsor Smith, was the first Conan the Barbarian comic book, and it was published by Marvel Comics in 1970. Conan was among the works of fiction that readers most frequently requested Marvel to be translated into comics. Along with the pulp magazine character Doc Savage, Tarzan, and John Carter of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs, Thomas, who was Marvel's associate editor at the time, acquired the licensed work from the estate of its creator Robert E. Howard when Stan Lee asked Thomas to take responsibility for inculcating the sword and sorcery genre into Marvel Comics. The story had a hero who lacked magical powers, humor, and many moral ideals. It was set in a history that had no connection to the Marvel Universe. However, it did contain the typical action and fantasy components, and thus Marvel took a massive gamble with Conan. However, the risk paid off, and Conan the Barbarian became one of Marvel's best-selling comics in the 1970s. John Buscema, a penciler, took over for Smith, while Thomas continued to write for many years. J.M. DeMatteis, Dog Munch, Jim Owsley, Michael Fleischer, Alan Zelenitz, Bruce Jones, Chuck Dixon, and Don Crayer were among the later authors of the Conan comics. Notably, Barack Obama, a former U.S. president, is a comic book collector and a major fan of Conan the Barbarian. He even played a part in a comic book titled Barack the Barbarian from Devil's Due. It was thus the comics that really cemented the presence of Conan and the title Conan the Barbarian in popular culture. In addition, in 1974, the Conan the Barbarian series gave rise to the more mature black and white comics magazine Savage Sword of Conan, which was created by Buscema and Alfredo Alcala with Thomas's writing. Along with multiple graphic novels featuring the character, Marvel also released a guidebook with comprehensive details on the Hyborian Age. Conan the Barbarian has since interacted with both heroes and villains and is formally recognized as being inside the greater Marvel Universe. The major success of Conan the Barbarian under Marvel also sparked Hollywood's interest in the material. Origins and backstory of the barbaric warrior. Conan's origin story is a harrowing tale. As per the written material, Conan is a Cimmerian, a far northern region barbarian. He is the son of the local blacksmith Corin and was famously born on a battlefield, and the story of his birth is a tale for the ages. His mother, Gretchen, nearly lost her life while trying to protect her husband during the fight in Cimmeria. As she neared death, the frail Gretchen gave birth to her son and blessed him with the name Conan. Conan developed swiftly, and by the time he was 15, he was already a renowned fighter who had helped to destroy the Apollonian outpost of Venarium. After that, he developed the restlessness and wanderlust, and that led to the vivid and thrilling exploits that Howard and others later wrote about. Conan's story arc in the most popular movie adaptation, 1982. Considering the massive success Conan saw with comics, it was only a matter of time before Conan made it into the big screen. This first movie saw Arnold Schwarzenegger appear in the lead role as the mighty Conan. At the time they started filming, he was 33 years old and in wonderful physical form. The movie details Conan's quest for revenge after his parents were murdered by a man named Thulsa Doom. The story begins with detailing the harrowing incidents in Conan's childhood that led him to becoming an orphan and being made to work as a slave. Conan was a Cimmerian, and his father was a master blacksmith who was capable of forging amazing weapons. They lived happily until one day a band of raiders attacked their people. This band of raiders was led by a cruel man called Thulsa Doom, and he oversaw the massacre and slaughter of Conan's people. The Cimmerians, who were not expecting such an attack, fell victim to the swords of Thulsa Doom and his men. In his struggle, Conan's father was killed by dogs, and his mother was personally decapitated by Thulsa Doom using the sword that Conan's father had forged for him. Conan managed to survive along with many of the other Cimmerian children. However, they were doomed to a life of slavery, chained to the wheel of pain, and forced to work a large mill. Orphaned at an early age, Conan grew up in these harsh circumstances and became a big, muscular man. He also received gladiator training from his master since he had the physique to be truly successful. Conan was subsequently set free after numerous victories in training and education in the East. He then began journeying in search of the man that killed his parents. Soon after, he was pursued by wild wolves and took cover in the tomb of an Atlantean colonist warrior where he found an old sword and made it his weapon. Conan then traveled the world and met Subutai, a Hyrcanian thief and archer, and they became traveling companions before coming upon a prophesied witch in a hut. The witch gave Conan information about the whereabouts of Doom, and he set off on a quest for revenge. During their travels, they meet a female brigand called Valeria, and she also joins their company as the three loot and adventure together. Soon, they are requested by King Osric to save his daughter, Princess Yasmina, who had become a zealot in Doom's cult. Conan, driven by his hatred for Doom and his desire for vengeance, departed alone for the villain's Temple of Set, also known as the Mountain of Power, because Subutai and Valeria declined to accept the task. However, before he could fulfill his objectives, he was captured and tortured by Doom and crucified on the Tree of Woe. Before he could succumb to his injuries, Conan was rescued by Subutai and healed by a wizard named Akiro. Having his health restored, Conan once again returned to his revenge quest, but this time, he was aided by his companions Subutai and Valeria. In their struggle against Thulsa Doom, unfortunately, Valeria, who had become Conan's romantic interest, loses her life. However, Conan is able to rescue the princess and drive Thulsa back. In the end, he is able to recover the sword that his father had forged for him, and he uses the very same sword to behead Thulsa Doom as well, finally avenging his parents. The film's epilogue alludes to Conan's subsequent adventures and depicts an elderly Conan seated on a throne wearing a crown, with the narration adding that in time he became a king by his own hand. The film received both positive and negative criticism, but that is to be expected when it comes to a film that is as violent as Conan the Barbarian. The reviews regularly made reference to Arnold Schwarzenegger's performance, and they were generally complimentary of the former bodybuilder's acting. His physical look and actions gave the impression that he was a savage. Numerous others claimed that Schwarzenegger's charisma and accent-mangled dialogue added to the movie's attraction to his supporters. All in all, Arnold in the film managed to embody the essence of Conan, which made the film deeply enjoyable. How Conan's story continues in Conan the Destroyer 1984. The 1982 Conan film was a major success and garnered a massive fan following. Thus, it only made sense to capitalize on the success and create a sequel. The sequel, titled Conan the Destroyer, came out 2 years after the first film, in the year 1984. From a screenplay by Stanley Mann and a narrative by Roy Thomas and Jerry Conway, Richard Fleischer directed the movie. Actors Arnold Schwarzenegger and Mako reprised their roles as Conan and Akiro, respectively. Conan, a formidable warrior, gets deceived into working for the cunning Queen Taramis of Shadizar in his second movie adventure. The Queen asks Conan to go on a quest for her and promises to resurrect Conan's beloved Valeria. Conan agrees to the terms, however the quest is a dangerous one. As per Queen Taramis, Conan was to accompany Princess Jenna, a virgin and the Queen's niece, who was destined to restore the jeweled horn of the dreaming deity Dagoth. To find the horn, Conan had to first obtain the magical gem heart of Ahriman. Further, Bombata, the captain of Taramis's guard, joined Conan and his friends Malak upon instructions from the Queen. However, unbeknownst to Conan, the Queen had secretly instructed her captain Bombata to kill Conan as soon as the gem was found. Thus, she never planned on resurrecting Valeria and wanted to kill Conan once he has served his purpose. Unaware of the Queen's evil scheme, Conan set off on his quest, and as we all know, nothing is straightforward, and before he can even reach the main quest, he has to fight off several other villains. He rescues his friend, the Mount Sorcerer Akiro, from a band of cannibals, and even encounters a powerful bandit named Zula. They finally arrive at the fortress, where the gem is kept and which happens to be the castle of a powerful wizard named Thoth Amon. Once here, Conan and his companions are tested and have to cross many hurdles before they are able to reach the gem. Conan fights a terrifying man-beast and finally kills the wizard Thoth Amon. However, he is then attacked by the Queen's soldiers. He makes it out alive, and Princess Jenna, who knows nothing of her aunt's deception, even professes her love to Conan. In the end, he is able to fight against Bombarda and the Queen's soldiers and is even able to stop Jenna from getting sacrificed as part of the ritual that would resurrect Dogoth. In fact, Conan even fights off Dogoth and finally restores peace. Jenna is crowned as queen and Conan rejects her proposal of marriage and decides to carry on his adventures instead. The critical response to this film was not as great as the previous one. However, fans still loved the film. Conan the Barbarian 2011 was a far cry from the 80s classic. King Conan, Crown of Iron, a tale about an older Conan, was rumored to be another Conan sequel in the late 1990s, but it was shelved after Schwarzenegger was elected governor of California in 2003. 7 years were spent by Warner Brothers trying to launch the project. The rights, however, were returned to Paradox Entertainment in June 2007, even though all drafts were created while Warner was in charge remained with them. The project's rights were purchased by Millennium Films, and this was revealed in August 2007. To have stories that were more true to the Robert E. Howard conception, production was intended for a spring 2006 start. Subsequently, Marcus Nispel was appointed by Millennium as a director in June 2009. Jason Momoa was then chosen in January 2010 to play Conan. The story follows Conan as he sets off once again on a revenge quest against a man named Kalar Zim who killed his parents. The tale here is slightly different and showcases the legend of the Mask of Acheron. Dark forces of Acheron once ruled the world after sorcerers created the Mask of Acheron. Barbarians defeated Acheron warriors, however, and split the mask's fragments among the tribes. But evil does not stay hidden for long. The evil warlord Kalar Zim invaded Chief Corin's barbaric Cimmerian hamlet in search of the final fragment of the Mask of Acheron, which he needed to resurrect his wife. This led to him killing Conan's parents and sparking off a desire for revenge in young Conan. The movie follows Conan as he tries to track down Kalar Zim and get his revenge. Unfortunately, when the movie was released in August 2011, it received negative reviews and performed poorly at the box office. Many found the story to be dull and sluggish, with cliched dialogues and overused tropes. In fact, many said that Jason Momoa was the only good thing about the movie. If you're a fan of Conan, this might be an interesting watch, but it is best not to have too many expectations.
Conan, the mightiest warrior ever!
Two popular animated TV series based on Conan. If films, novels, and comic books were not enough, there are also two animated shows based on Conan that are worth checking out. Conan the Adventurer and Conan and the Young Warriors. Both these animated shows were created in the early 90s. Conan the Adventurer, a 65-episode animated television series called Conan the Adventurer, was created by Jetlag Productions and Sunbow Productions. It premiered on September 13, 1992, and it ended on November 23, 1993. In the series, Conan pursued an enemy, the Serpent Man wizard known as Wrath Ammon, around the globe in an effort to free his parents from a curse that had resulted in their unending torment. The plot showcased Conan's journey from being a young boy to a grown man as he went on a quest to claim his sword made of star metal. However, Wrath Ammon also wanted the star metal weapons for himself. To do so, he tracked down Conan's family, and when his father refused to hand over the star metal or the weapons to him, he cursed Conan's family using the spell of Living Stone. The show follows Conan's journey as he tries to find a way to reverse the curse and take down Wrath Ammon. In the end, Conan successfully defeats Wrath Ammon and the rest of the Serpent Men, and even manages to free his family from the curse. The show is entertaining, especially if you're a fan of the Conan stories. Notably, this Conan animated cartoon had a higher level of contemporary morality than the classic Conan tales and Conan-related Marvel comics such as King Conan, the Conan Saga, Conan the Barbarian, and Conan the King. The cartoon Conan is much more in common with sword-wielding kids' cartoons characters like He-Man than the genuine Conan, who is a burglar, a murderer, and a philanderer. The violence was also toned down, presumably to make Conan kid-friendly.
Together, battling the forces of evil, they are Conan and the Young Warriors.
Conan and the Young Warriors. As a follow-up to the animated series Conan the Adventurer, Conan and the Young Warriors was an American television cartoon series from 1994 that was created by Sunbow Entertainment and broadcasted by CBS. John Grusd was the show's director and Michael Reeves was its creator. It only had a single season with 13 episodes, likely because this one was not as well received as its predecessor. The plotline of this show was completely different than what Conan Conan fans were otherwise used to. In this story, Conan believed that his questing life was over after defeating Wrath Ammon and bringing his family back to life from living stone. But now, until the time comes when they are meant to take over Hyboria, he must train and guard the Chosen Ones, a trio of new young warriors who possesses mystical starstones. Hence, Conan ended up in the role of a mentor and coach rather than being in the thick of all the action, which was disappointing. This series too was made kid-friendly, which meant that the violence was turned down, almost making Conan appear naive and robbing him of his savage appeal. Furthermore, apart from Conan's character design, which is the same as that in Conan the Adventurer, there are only a few minor similarities between this series and its predecessor, and references to the earlier series are made in an effort to establish a connection. This also made the show feel somewhat disjointed. Conan the Adventurer, 1997, a live-action TV series that brought a different version of Conan. We have explored the animated Conan shows, and now we come to the Conan live-action TV series. Weekly live-action television episodes of Conan the Adventurer aired on American television in the late 90s. The legendary fantasy figure Conan the Barbarian served as the primary inspiration for this production, which Max A. Keller and Michelin Keller staged between 1997 and 1998. 28 episodes of the program, which had its premiere on September 22, 1997, were primarily shot in Puerto Vallarta, Jalisco, Mexico. Notably, Ralph Moeller, a two-time Mr. Universe German native and close friend of Arnold Schwarzenegger, performed the part of Conan. The show in itself was entertaining, and it is always fun to watch your favorite characters come to life. However, because this version was more non-violent and catered to all age groups, the plot diverged from the core of the Conan character, as well as that of the Conan previously portrayed in the 1980s film and comic book series by Marvel Comics. The series plot followed Conan on yet another one of his legendary quests to take down the villain Hisazul. Hisazul was an all-powerful sorcerer who dominated and ruled Cimmeria, Conan's native country, with an iron grip using magic, deception, and threats. He had brutally killed Conan's parents, and he frequently appeared in the show as the villainous mastermind who was just narrowly thwarted by Conan. In the show, Conan and a warrior army rise up in opposition and battle to liberate Cimmeria from the demonic tyrant and his henchmen. Conan fights mythological beasts that prowl the countryside as he continues his travels. As per the show, Conan had been chosen by the gods to fight evil and had been instructed by Crom that he was destined to be a king. Thus, Conan wanted to exact revenge on Hisazul for killing his family and constantly trying to hunt him down. What makes Conan one of the deadliest warriors? Conan is hands down one of the deadliest warriors ever known to mankind. His savagery knows no bounds, and that is one of the main reasons that he drew so many fans from all across the world. Here is a complete breakdown of all his powers and abilities. Starting with his innate attributes, Conan is obviously extremely strong and is often said to be an example of peak human strength. Remember, Conan is just a man. He is not a superhero or a demigod, and thus cannot be compared with characters who fall into that category. Conan boasts strength way over the hardiest of his race. He was regarded as possessing the strength of 10 to 20 men, making him one of the physically strongest people to have ever lived. He is also extremely durable. Conan's enormous height, strength, and mental fortitude are thought to have a greater capacity for harm resistance than that of regular people. His bones, or at least his cranium, appear to be stronger than that of a usual human. On one occasion, when he fell on his head in a ravine, he was only knocked unconscious, whereas others would have had their head split open. His durability is also physiological, making him far more resistant to poison than others. Once, after consuming the purple lotus liquid that would have killed 1 or 2 regular men, he turned into a living corpse instead of dying. Similar to this, Conan believed there was no such thing as too much drinking, and he always awoke with a clear brain, the alcohol seemingly never affecting him. He had also reached the upper limits of human endurance. Conan could push himself for a substantial length of time without rest and stay awake for days before showing any indications of exhaustion. Conan also had enough stealth to surprise forest animals because he was nurtured in a wilderness environment. Growing up in a community of barbarians, Conan's experience as a thief allowed him to further hone this. Additionally, he was able to move quietly and stealthily, which aided him in his quests and journeys. Conan's speed and agility were also much more than what a man of his size should have. In fact, his movements were frequently compared to those of a jungle cat. It is important to acknowledge that Conan spent a lot of time outdoors, both out of need and as a source of recreation, growing up amid the gloomy highlands of Cimmeria. As a result, he also gained vision, hearing, and smelling senses that were much more acute than those of a civilized person. Aided by his natural strengths, Conan grew to become a great fighter, both with and without weapons. Conan was a very powerful opponent. He had had extensive training to proficiently handle the majority of the weaponry in use at the time. With his preference being a two-handed broadsword, he has proved to be able to kill highly competent and armed opponents, whether armed or barehanded, and his ability, cruelty, and ferocity while in a fight were unmatched. Conan was far more skilled in combat than the hardiest members of his kind. While in Hyrcania, he acquired bow handling skills. A natural leader and commander of men, his extensive combat experience provided him with a great deal of tactical and strategic insight, which he used to plan his schemes and attacks. With all of these powers and abilities combined together, Conan grew into a feared and respected warrior in the Hyborian Age, having ties with various pirates and philanderers. Further added a layer of ruggedness to his fighting style and persona. All in all, he is easily one of the deadliest warriors to have ever lived. Why did the third Conan movie featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger get indefinitely delayed? As we all know by now, Schwarzenegger gained notoriety as the prehistoric warrior in the fantasy classic Conan the Barbarian in 1982, and he returned to the character in Conan the Destroyer in 1984. Conan the Destroyer ended up with a tease for a third Conan film featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger, but we never got to see it. While other Arnold franchises have made a comeback to the big screen, the Conan movie has remained little more than a notion. Recently, Arnold and others have made it apparent that they still want to rejoin the world of Conan. However, what is stopping them seems to be complications with the legal rights and issues with Howard's estate, and not a lack of passion or creativity. In fact, Arnold has even stated that he wants to make a Conan movie similar to Unforgiven, where we return to Conan, who is now old and has been sitting on his throne for 40 years. He envisions a Conan who has evolved into one of the rulers and authorities he once detested. He has fallen victim to the same trick that has seduced revolutionary men over the ages. He's gotten overweight and lazy and is currently overindulging in food and women. We see an elderly man with little value. The third film for Arnold should be his reluctant comeback story. As an old Conan begins to feel like his life is beginning to slip away and getting taken away from him, the movie will chronicle his journey as he tries to get it back. Now, there is no confirmation that this is the official script, but we will just have to wait and see. There is also no date or any confirmation that the film would actually be happening. Even though Arnold is in his 70s, he shows no signs of stopping, and his personal interest in a Conan sequel is what has and continues to give fans hope. The fantasy genre is enjoying a comeback thanks to the success of shows like Game of Thrones, The Witcher, and Lord of the Rings: The Rings of Power. It would be ideal for Schwarzenegger and Milius to collaborate once more at this moment and present a more modern take on the brand. By and large, it is easy to see that Conan is a beloved character that has been around for almost a century now, having a rich history with multiple writers and artists contributing to Conan's stories over the years has brought it much popularity. Furthermore, Hollywood truly cemented Conan as a fantasy character par excellence. While fans wait for the Conan sequel with bated breath, which Conan media would be your favorite among those we mentioned in the video? Tell us in the comment section down below. If you like our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.